Hello and welcome to the Gavel, coming to you from our Abuja studios. I'm Terry Ikumi. Now, not much of security-related issues were considered at the National Assembly during this past week, but there were mentions. The House of Representatives Committee on Army, having concluded its investigation into the alleged mass resignation of soldiers from the Nigerian Army last year, presented its report before the Green Chamber. And after consideration, the House adopted the report, which largely called for improved welfare for the Army and effective delivery of welfare packages across the ranks to serve as motivation to avoid further mass resignation in the military. But before that, the House of Representatives on Tuesday urged the federal government to urgently secure the release of Pastor Bulus Yakura, who was kidnapped from Borno State by Boko Haram terrorists. He was eventually released the following day. Here's our first report with the details.
Pastor Bulus Yakura, who was kidnapped by Boko Haram on the 24th of December 2020, was released 24 hours before the deadline set for its execution by the terrorist group.
Aware that one person.
His release also came 24 hours after a member of the House of Representatives, Ahmadu Jaha, moved an urgent motion on the floor of the Green Chamber, asking the federal government to urgently secure his release before the March 4 deadline set by the insurgents. Pastor Yakura was said to have been abducted when the insurgents attacked Pemi village, Chibok, killing at least 7 persons. Since then, 2 videos had emerged showing the pastor calling on government to secure his release.
Aware that on Wednesday, the 24th day of February 2021, the Boko Haram released a video clip showing Pastor Bulus Yakura clamoring for help and giving him 1 week to facilitate his release. Worried by the continuous closing of 1 week period given by the insurgents, which expires on Thursday, the 4th day of March 2021, concerned that at the expiration of the deadline, anything can happen to Pastor Bulus Yakura. So the House, note that the House should intimate, that is the prayers of the motion, the House should intimate the federal government to do everything possible to secure the release of the victim before the deadline.
Following widespread reports of the purported resignation of 356 soldiers from the Nigerian Army in the July of 2020, the House of Representatives deliberated on the matter in that same month and mandated its House Committee on Army to carry out a thorough investigation. The report on the mass resignation suggested that the voluntary resignation of the soldiers at the time, who claimed to have lost interest, was owing to poor welfare and indications that the army was not well equipped to battle insurgents. While presenting the findings and recommendations of the committee, the chairman faulted the media reports.
During the course of our investigation, we discovered that soldiers can resign from the army after 10 years. Once you serve after 10 years, you have the right to resign from the army, and it can be voluntary or it can be compulsory. On the course of our findings, we discovered that not only 365 soldiers that were actually voluntarily resigned, about 386 of them resigned. And we discovered that the issues is just about welfare. And in our recommendations, we stated that to avoid mass resignation from the army, because every year in year out, people resign from the army. So we recommended that the Nigerian army should improve on the welfare of its personnel, especially those in battlefields or other combat operations, to further make them more committed to their job and to the nation at large. There should be effective monitoring or follow-up in the delivery of welfare packages in all army formations, to ensure that they reach all the beneficiaries in a fair and equitable manner.
Now, that report of the committee also stated that in the last 5 years, the disengagement so far is lower than the enlistment in the army, as 6,752 were disengaged and 25,655 were enlisted, and that not all the soldiers who voluntarily resigned were actively involved in combat operations, so no cause for worry, according to the Army. Now, for a more detailed understanding of the circumstances surrounding the resignation of the military officers and other related security matters, here's my conversation with the Chairman, House Committee on Army, Abdulrazak Namdas.
From our investigation, we discovered that 356 out of the 386 that we found out that voluntarily resigned said they lost interest in the job. They indicated because soldiers are allowed to put in their own handwriting when you want to leave the service after putting 10 years in service. So the reasons they gave was that they lost interest in the job. 24 of them said, look, we want to take over our parents' businesses, where 6 of them were because of on medical grounds, so they voluntarily resigned. So that was why we recommended that why is it that people are losing interest? Although we discovered that every year soldiers resign. That's why we gave a graph of 5 years of resignation. So we discovered that if motivation could be the issue, then the army should do more in terms of getting welfare for the people. Not only providing the welfare, but going straight to the commands to ensure that people are supervised and the soldiers get what is expected of them. That probably could be a motivating factor and they could remain in the army. And more importantly, again, the public affairs department of the army should not just do orientation during recruitment and stay. Even people who are still in the army, they should continuously be doing the kind of orientation. Tell them that, look, you are serving your nation. It is more than a job. Because when people take up the job, some will go to the army because they want a job, because of lack of job somewhere. Once they get into the army and now realize the reality that they have to face Boko Haram, and after 10 years, you feel like, look, I can no longer continue. I think that was the reason, and we recommended that welfare is very important and that people should be motivated to serve in the army. In 2018, there were 444 of them that resigned. The number dropped. In 2016, 130 some of them resigned. So the number is not static, but it rises and goes down. But given the challenge, we want to believe that people who are, because the welfare packages of the army is such that if you die in war, you are expected that your family, they should cater for your family, your children, education, and then at least there should be some time given to the soldiers' family before they are evicted. So if sometimes when you find families being evicted from the barracks, it could be worrisome. But I think the army authorities are also handling such manners, and that is why we said, please, if people have agreed to serve and you post them, then their family should be taken care of and the allowances should be there. But more critical is that people should not serve beyond the normal period they are supposed to serve in war front. For example, you can't be in Badagri for 5 years. It can be demoralizing, no matter how good you are. People will say, okay, transfer yourself and get to a place. So we said, okay, at the committee level, we said, please, let it, no matter how long it takes, let it not be more than 2 years. Because we used to know that after every 6 months, people are reassigned other jobs. But don't keep one soldier in one place for 5 years, 3 years. It can be demoralizing. And I think they are really working to that. And even the new man on affairs is also talking about that, and they are working on making sure that people do not stay in one place. So there should be no fatigue. Even if the welfare is there shouldn't be fatigue. These are combination of factors as far as I'm concerned.
What are your expectations? Because you were among those who called for the resignation or the change of power as far as the military heads are concerned.
Almost all the service teams that have been put in place, the new ones, have been commanders in this operation one way or the other. Like the Chief of Defense Staff was also a commander of Operation Latia Dole. He's a well-known soldier in Meduguri. So also the present Chief of Army Staff once commanded the Operation Latia Dole. So when people have commanded such positions, we believe this is a critical part as far as the army job is concerned now. So if you have commanded that, that is a challenge that you have already achieved. So probably when they were serving under some people, they had other things in mind, but they couldn't implement because they were not the bosses. Now they are the bosses. We expect that there are things that could change. Let us look at their approach. So particularly for me, I was happy when the new man said, okay, we have given you 48 hours to go and take over, retake Marte. And they did. So that is motivation on its own. And if you give instruction and people achieve it, then the army should go back. What did they do to achieve that? And if it's something that we can sustain it in other parts, take look at those critical things and then sustain it. But we don't expect that. The problem Nigerians always face is that when you achieve something, you go back and relax. And before you realize, people take over again. Now, I will expect the chief of army staff, after achieved this kind of success, because if he had given that 48 hours and then it failed, he should be, people he will answer the questions by now. But now that he has succeeded, he should also answer more questions, because he should now know what were the motivating factors that make those army officers and gentlemen to retake Martin. Now, what can you do to retake Dikwa? Because we also heard that Dikwa is also on the line. What can you do about the bandits? So these are things that we will now see and begin to see, okay, if there are challenges, what can we do as legislators to come in to help you to do this? Until you tell us and we work together, we cannot be able to say this is this.
One of the things that it should be concerned about is the trust of Nigerians, because there's a huge level of distrust among Nigeria between Nigerians and the army right now. And as Chairman House Committee on Army, when you speak with the army, how do you advise that they go about this?
It is easy to sit in an office and criticize army. For some of us who've been to the war front and seen what the soldiers are going through, you cannot but say that they are doing their best. Of course, there is no institution that is perfect. There's no place that say they are the best. They also have their own challenges. They have people who are indisciplined also. And that is why there's room for court martial, there's room for discipline and things like that. But I can say that please don't leave the job to army alone. Because even when two people are fighting today, is the army. Army is in 34 out of 36 states. It's abnormal. The army should be in the barracks. Protect the territorial integrity of the country, either air, water, or sea, or land. But here, they are now in 34 out of 36 states. That means they are becoming policemen. And before you realize, you will be confusing the duty of the police and the army. I think that is something Nigeria should look at.
But when you look at the state of security right now, and how repeatedly in the National Assembly that conversations of insecurity keep coming up, and the issue of kidnappings is becoming even more rampant now, how does that make you feel as a lawmaker? What are the engagements that you could possibly have with the military?
Well, for me, both the military and the political class, let me tell you, I've read in the papers today, the governor of Zamfara State is saying that some people have decided that they will give money to bandits not to release our children. That means there is something that is going on that we do not know. And here, I will be on the side of even the governor of Kaduna State that say we should not be talking to bandits. Because if you make banditry a lucrative business, where you talk to criminals who have AK-47 on their shoulders, and then probably you pay ransom. When a soldier who is in the village, who is in the bush, takes 2,000 per day, and then a group of bandits who will be asking for 1 billion, 500 million, and they will get it. By the time they get this money, they stockpile arms. The day this guy has stockpiled enough arms, they will not be operating in the fringes. They will be coming to the state capitals and probably the FCT. And that's what we should understand. So it's to me criminal to even talk to bandits. The essence of government is to protect the security and welfare of the people. We should even nip in the bud the issue of kidnapping. Because my fear is that the petty criminals will begin to upgrade to bandits, because this is the only crime that leaders will be talking to them and they will make more money. So you are likely to encourage pickpocketer to become a bandit, because at one point, one government official will be talking to them, and when they give them money, they will release. Why should somebody be talking to bandits that they shouldn't be released? Something is fishy. I am not a security personnel, but I think we as legislators too will talk to our leaders. We will see what we can do and go beyond the normal and see how we can talk together.
Welcome back to the Gavel. Let's look at some other activities of federal lawmakers in the week under review. Now, the chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired, is seeking the urgent intervention of the National Assembly for increased funding to enable the agency fight the war on drugs, as he warns that the nation is at siege from drug abuse. He stated this during a visit to the President of the Senate. Also, the House of Representatives is calling for measures to be put in place to prevent the Ebola virus from resurfacing in the country, following reported cases in neighboring countries like the Congo and Guinea. These and more in this report. The Senate has directed 3 of its committees to interface with the Ministry of Works and the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, FEMA, to determine why the Badagri Expressway has been abandoned for a long time. The joint committee is also to work out a permanent and sustainable solution for the completion of the project and reports to the Senate. The Senate gave the directive after considering a motion by a federal lawmaker, Senator Sadiq Umar.
The Senate knows that the Badagri Expressway is a federal government road which connects 12 states: Lagos, Badagri, Ogun, Agbara, Oyo, Abeokuta, Kwara, Niger, Kebbi, and Sokoto states at the national level, with Benin, Togo, and Niger at the international level. The connection to urban corridors will increase off-season employment for rural youth and sustain youth employment and employability.
In the House of Representatives, lawmakers are calling for measures to be put in place to prevent the Ebola virus from resurfacing in the country. The lawmakers are concerned that with other African countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo and Guinea recording Ebola cases, it has become pertinent to create awareness about the disease in the country as a preventive measure. The House also wants surveillance at the nation's point of entry to promptly identify and handle possible cases.
On February 7, 2021, the Democratic Republic of Congo had again announced a resurface of a new case of the Ebola virus, months after the outbreak was declared over in the region. In the same vein, on Sunday, February 14, 2021, Guinea's Ministry of Health also declared an Ebola outbreak following the mysterious death of 3 persons. It is on record that in the last 1 year, we have experienced 2 waves of infections and recorded a lot of fatalities. Today, Nigerian health institutions have been stretched beyond its capacity in the past 1 year and cannot afford to witness another outbreak of dreaded virus.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is asking the Independent National Electoral Commission to, without further delay, review constituency delineation as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution. The lawmakers are worried that though the Constitution provides a 10-year time frame for constituency reviews, INEC has not done any known reviews in the last 22 years of the current democratic dispensation.
If the Constitution that is supreme has made provision, that INEC do it. So I think INEC should not answer why they are failing in that their duty. You understand? It's not for ours is to bring it up before the Nigerians that INEC has failed to comply with that provision of reviewing every constituency to see if there had been increase in growth, population growth, that will warrant more constituencies to be so provided.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired, says the NDLEA was comatose when he took over the leadership of the agency in January this year. Mr. Marwa, who made the remark during a visit to the President of the Senate, also lamented that the morale of staff in the NDLEA is the weakest he has ever seen in a paramilitary organization.
Almost every single staff is owed either a DTA allowance or his allowance for prosecution, the movement to and fro, court processes, or transfer, traveling. There's over 4 billion naira owed just for the staff and death benefits. So morale is so low, there's stagnation, the promotions, postings, because there's no money.
My personal opinion is NDLEA should be in the league of EFCC, ICPC, that kind of thing. And therefore, the kind of support that those 2 agencies I mentioned receive, you should receive something like that.
The NDLEA chairman also met with the House of Representatives Committee on Drugs, Narcotics and Financial Crimes. where he was urged to fight the war against hard and illicit drugs in Nigeria to a standstill.
The criminalities, whether it's insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, rape, and so on, drug is behind it. And unless we face that underlying problem, we will still be scratching the surface.
We are working very hard. We are not relenting. We are going to ensure that we give you all the support that you need. And we're also grateful to Mr. President for approving for the NDLEA, the employment of Nigerians, because we believe very clearly that as more and more hands are engaged in the NDLEA, that problem of understaffing will be solved to a large extent.
Our final report is on the visit of the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Alhassan Doguwa, to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, asking for resumption of international flights at the Kano International Airport. The Kano caucus of the House of Representatives during the meeting with the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, pleaded for the reopening of the international wing of the Malam Aminu Kano Airport. Leader of the delegation, House Majority Leader Ado Doguwa, said it is in the interest of the 7 northwestern states and Nigeria in general for the international wing to be reopened, as its continued closure undermines businesses.
That the cause for which the airport was closed, especially at the commencement of the COVID-19 pandemic, was quite obvious, and you had your good reasons for doing what you did. But it is our concern, Your Excellency, the Minister, Permanent Secretary, and other relevant staffs of the Aviation Ministry in Nigeria, that as long as other 2 important or 2 key airports have been allowed to reopen and operate their international windows, we have serious concern as to why the Aminu Kano International Airport still remains closed. It is of concern to us, like I've said, because it has negatively affected commercial activities in this commercial nerve center of the sub-West African region. It is of concern to us, Mr. Minister, because it has also negatively affected on the well-being and the operations of our foreign students who do have cause time to time to travel out of the country for academic pursuits, most of whom have to travel as far as Kaduna, Abuja, Lagos, and sometimes even beyond these 2 places to travel for their normal academic pursuits in diaspora.
In response, the minister says the decision doesn't affect Kano alone, and it's the best decision for now.
The decision was taken, and that decision was taken in conjunction with the NCDC, the Port Health, the Ministry of Aviation, National Security Architecture. Kano is not any different from Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt is also equally closed. Enugu is also closed. There is oil and gas activity in Port Harcourt. They now have to be chartering airplanes to land into Port Harcourt. There's trade and commerce, not as significant. It's a health matter and matter of national security. Constitutional national security of lives and property of the people. So when it becomes time enough to stagger the opening or reopening of airports to begin to allow flights to start, it is in the wisdom of the Presidential Task Force of COVID-19, the Presidency, the Ministry of Health, the National Security Architecture, and Civil Aviation to start opening with Abuja alone at the time.
He assures that international airports across the country will soon be reopened.
I want to assure the good people of Kano, Jigawa, my own state, Katsina, Zamfara, Jos, and Bauchi, and Kaduna, to please kindly bear with the situation. Kano, Port Harcourt, Enugu are on their way to being opened. We are doing the best that we can, and inshallah khair. By God's grace, it is something that will be of benefit to our society, and nobody will inflict harm on purpose on the people to which you either represent or they elect you.
On a sad note, another member of the House of Representatives, Yusuf Kila, has died after battling severe malaria for weeks. Until his death on the 4th of March, he was chairman of the House Committee on Customs and Excise. Well, that's it on The Gavel this week. Remember to send feedback to thegavel@channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.